Tsavo East, early morning. A patch of earth lies undisturbed along the southern bend of the Galana River, dry and fractured under a rising sun. From the truck it looks like nothing more than another stretch of hardened mud, buckled and scorched from last week's heat. But one of the rangers, Mumo, riding in the back, leans forward, narrowing his eyes. Something flickered. Not light, not shadow, movement. He steps down before the engine cuts. Walks slowly. 10 meters out, he stops. At first, it's nothing, just dust and cracks and riverbed silence. Then again, there, barely visible, a twitch, soft and slow, like the flap of a fly-bothered ear. He waves to the others, then kneels. Buried to the ribs in dried sludge lies a calf, no older than 6 months. His back legs are submerged, twisted unnaturally. One side of his face is pressed into the soil, the other caked in flies. His eye, dark and half-closed, blinks once when Mumo speaks. "It's alive," he says softly. The others approach quietly, boots careful not to crunch over broken earth. They form a circle, 5 men in faded canvas and sweat-damp collars, not daring to move too fast or too close. The calf does not cry out. He doesn't thrash. His breathing is shallow, his body still. Only the ear moves now and then, like it's listening for something he no longer hears. The mud around him is old and thick. It hasn't been soft in days. Rain passed here nearly a week ago, but this low spot near the bend must have held water long enough to trap a wandering young one. There are no adult prints nearby, no dragging marks, no sign of a herd returning. If he's been here since the rains, he's been alone for days. One ranger drops to his knees beside Mumo and tests the outer edge with a stick. The surface crumbles, but deeper down it holds. They'll need more than hands. A shovel is passed forward, buckets, boards from the back of the vehicle. But first they test the calf's response. He doesn't move. Mumo dips a bottle into the basin, letting water catch in his palm. Slowly, he drips it down the calf's mouth. The tongue doesn't extend, but after the third pour, the calf's trunk stirs faintly, just an inch, just enough to brush Mumo's wrist. It's a sign. They begin to clear the perimeter, softening the edges with small, steady pours. The sun climbs higher, cracking the surface further. A crow passes overhead but does not land. Somewhere in the distance, the dry cough of buffalo hooves echoes and fades. One foot is completely buried, the other turned under. Pulling too fast could break it. Lifting too soon could tear skin. If they move him wrong, he might never walk again. They don't speak much, only small words, phrases used in other rescues, other mornings like this. Easy now. Just a little more. Almost there. Each scoop of mud brings a new risk. The deeper they dig, the more weight shifts onto the calf's torso. Twice they pause to reassess the angle. Once, the calf exhales sharply. It's the loudest sound he's made since they arrived. Every few minutes, Mumo checks the calf's eye. Still blinking, still there. Time stretches. Dust clings to sweat. Their sleeves darken, but they don't stop, because if they do, if they leave him now, he'll sink again by night. The ground will tighten. The wind will change. And no one will know where he is. By late morning, the back legs begin to show their full shape. One is scraped raw from struggling, the other limp with fatigue. His front limbs are still strong. There's hope, but only if they finish. In the silence between efforts, only the wind moves, carrying the smell of warm earth and old rain across the open plain. The baby does not cry. But when Mumo brushes his trunk again, the calf lets it rest just briefly against his palm. A pause, a breath, a beginning. Across the dry basin, the wind shifted. Mumo paused, hands still muddy, and glanced toward the distant line of trees. Something moved, not fast, not loud, but enough to pull every head in the team toward the shade. Between the pale trunks of acacia, a single figure emerged. Large, gray, and unmoving. An adult elephant stood at the tree line, half in shadow. Her ears were not spread. Her trunk hung low. She did not charge and did not raise dust with her feet. She only watched. One of the younger rangers whispered, "That's the mother." No one disagreed. She had not made a sound. There were no tracks leading to her, no trumpet call, no warning. But she had been there. Likely through the night, maybe longer. The angle of her position suggested patience, not fear. Not a retreat, but a vigil. They could see the shape of her ribs from here. Hunger, maybe. Or grief. Her skin sagged slightly under the belly, and one of her tusks was chipped. She shifted her weight once, almost imperceptibly, and took a single step closer before halting again. Still, she made no sound. The calf stirred faintly as the heat thickened. His trunk twitched. Mumo leaned close again, dribbling more water into the soft creases of the young elephant's mouth. A small response came. A weak lift, a blink. It was enough to continue. But now there was a new layer to weigh. If they freed him and he could not stand, he would be too weak to survive alone. If they freed him and she panicked, the moment could turn dangerous. And if they waited too long, the mud might tighten again, pinning him past the point of rescue. They resumed slowly, shovels angling away from the calf's ribs. Boards were laid flat beside him to help shift his body when the time came. No one raised their voice. No sudden movements. The space between man and elephant had grown smaller, but the silence was a fragile thing. The mother stepped forward once more, then stopped. Her tail swayed slightly. She raised her trunk, not high, but enough to scent the air. They were close enough now to see her eyes. She did not blink. Every few minutes the rangers looked up to find her still there, always watching, never turning away. She seemed to understand the difference between harm and help, or perhaps she only recognized stillness in the way they moved. She had not left her calf, even as hours passed. By late morning she had circled slightly, no more than 20 meters off. Not a threat, but close enough to remind them. The message did not need words. She was waiting, and if the calf rose, she would be there. One ranger murmured, "She hasn't moved all day." The mud was breaking apart now, loosening at the joints. A small pool of runoff gathered beneath the calf's stomach as they poured more water to soften the clay. His breathing remained shallow but steady. They had cleared enough to try, but they held back. Watched her. Watched him. If they moved too fast, she might react. If they hesitated longer, the calf might lose strength. Every decision hung in that quiet space between their eyes and hers. She blinked, finally. Turned her head slightly, not away, but to the side. A kind of permission. They would try again. Overhead, the sun passed its highest point. Her shadow, once stretched wide, shortened by a few inches. Still, she waited. Still, she stood. Stillness was her language, and the rangers understood it now. Mumo stepped back, his palms raw from the shovel handle. The sun was directly overhead now, flattening the color of the grass and pressing heat into every movement. The calf's breathing had grown faster, short bursts through flared nostrils, his ribs shuddering against the compacted mud. He was free from the belly up, but the lower half of his body remained sealed into the riverbed like a fossil in clay. Ranger Elias knelt beside him. He wore gloves, but the leather had thinned with use. His hands moved gently, fingers curling into cracks, prying apart dry plates of earth, lifting them in pieces no bigger than a child's shoe. He did not rush. He did not speak. The others poured water from canteens and buckets, softening the rim of the pit inch by inch. They worked around the calf, not over him. The baby didn't stir. His eyes tracked Elias with tired focus, one blink at a time. There were no cries, no protests, only breathing and blinking, the kind of silence that comes after days of effort, when even fear has grown quiet. The ground clung to the back legs, hardened around the joints. If they pulled, they could dislocate a knee. If they waited too long, the tissue could begin to break down from pressure and heat. Either way, the damage could be permanent. He would never walk again. And if he could not walk, he would not survive. Elias scooped out a shallow trench beneath the left leg, working around the knee with 2 fingers and a dull spoon. It wasn't a tool meant for rescue, but it kept him from cutting too deep. Beside him, another ranger laid down a length of canvas to brace the lower limb once it loosened. They were preparing for the final lift. The mother stood where she had been since morning, near the trees, unmoving, her ears resting low. Occasionally, she took a slow step forward, then paused again. The herd was nowhere in sight. She was alone, just like the calf. She hadn't called out. Elias reached the base of the calf's heel and pressed upward gently with his palm. The leg shifted just slightly, an inch or two in wet sand. The calf let out a quiet exhale, barely audible, but it was the first sound he'd made since dawn. A low, tremulous breath. Elias stopped moving. "He felt that," he said softly. The rangers reset the boards under the calf's chest to prepare for a full lift. 2 held ropes, not for pulling, but for guiding the movement in case the calf kicked. They would only lift once the legs were free. But they had to move soon. The heat would soon be too much. Another scoop of mud came loose, then another. The second leg was more swollen, discolored from pressure and heat. They wetted again, trying to cool the tissue. Time was narrowing. The rangers worked in rhythm now, one clearing, one lifting, and one watching the elephant's eyes. Still no struggle. Still no sound. The last mound of mud fell away from the joint. The calf's foot slumped sideways into the carved-out trench. Not limp, but not strong either. Elias slid both arms under the leg and held it for a moment. No resistance, no kick, just warmth and weight. "All right," he murmured. They paused. The ropes were ready. The boards are in place. Elias placed a hand against the calf's side. "If he moves too fast, the leg could snap," one ranger said. "If he doesn't move soon, the leg will fail anyway," said another. They nodded. It was time. The canvas slid beneath him. The team braced. Elias gave the signal, and together they lifted. Not pulling, just angling, just enough to shift weight. The calf's body rolled softly to one side. One leg twitched, then both. The eye followed Elias again, not with fear, just recognition, as if every minute of quiet digging had earned something neither of them had words for. The baby's trunk moved once, curling weakly toward the man's shoulder. Then fell again, still breathing, still there. The boards shifted slightly under the calf's belly, groaning with his weight. One leg kicked once, slow and without strength, before settling again in the softened trench. The robes lay slack at his side, not yet used. Mumo poured a final bucket of water into the pit, watching it vanish into the dust like a breath. Elias crouched again. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from hours of still work in unrelenting heat. The mud had dried hard around the calf's lower spine, curling in ridges along his flanks like cracked pottery. Each movement now carried risk. With the surface loosened, the earth was no longer locked tight, but what remained was worse. Shallow, deceptive, unstable, like glass under pressure. "If he moves, he dies," Elias said quietly. The others heard it, but didn't speak. The truth was not new, but saying it made it heavier. A wrong angle, a startled kick, even the calf trying to stand too soon. Any of it could spiral into injury. A broken hip, a torn tendon. If that happened, the outcome wouldn't change with more water. They worked in small motions. One man pressed his shoulder into the canvas to keep it from slipping. Another wedged a plank between the calf's knee and the inner wall of the trench, bracing it so the joint would stay neutral if the calf shifted weight. Elias knelt behind the calf's ear, one hand steady on the skin, waiting for the breath to deepen. The calf didn't struggle, but his body began to tremble, a small, steady quake, like the nerves beneath his ribs were waking. His trunk curled once, then dropped. His breathing grew louder, then softer. He knew something had changed. They poured more water. Mud flowed away in veins, carving darker channels through the earth. The last of it clung around the base of the tail and the upper haunch. Elias reached down and brushed it clear with an open palm. The skin underneath was raw in patches, rubbed clean of hair by hours of weight and friction. They laid fresh cloth under his legs to wick away moisture and reduce the bite of the sun. Mumo knelt near the head and whispered something under his breath. The others didn't ask what. The calf's eye blinked once in response. Now, only one thing remained. Movement. If he stood on his own, it had to be slow. If they assisted too much, his joints could fail under pressure. If they helped too little, he could fall. Every second was weighted with decisions, but there was no formula to follow, just instinct and observation. Elias moved to the calf's side and crouched low, his face level with the ribs. The baby shifted slightly, not a roll, but a lean, the first conscious effort. They didn't intervene. They waited. The left foreleg bent, the right one tucked. A grunt escaped the calf's throat, then silence again. His body wavered in place, too weak to lift. Mumo adjusted the plank. Another ranger moved in to help support the chest. Elias whispered, "Not yet," and they paused. The calf settled again, his limbs unsure. He wasn't ready. If he moved now, the weight could shear the joint from within. He needed rest, not force. They would wait again. Minutes, maybe longer. Around them, the air thickened with heat. Cicadas stirred in the grass. The mother hadn't moved from the tree line. Her eyes never left the pit. Elias stepped back, letting the wind touch his face. Time was narrowing, but pushing now could end everything. The calf's ears twitched gently in the silence. A soft breath left his trunk. He didn't rise, but he didn't slump either. He was still listening, still trying, still here. The light had shifted. Shadows that once hugged the base of the acacias now stretched longer across the plain, bending around stones and low shrubs. Heat shimmered along the horizon, pulling dust into the sky like smoke. The men hadn't moved much in the last hour, only shifted their knees, wet the cloths, and steadied the boards. The calf lay as before, half lifted, eyes open, trunk limp but breathing. Then Mumo stood. He didn't speak, didn't point. He just turned his head slightly, eyes fixed on the northern edge of the plain. Elias followed the glance. Far off, beyond the shimmer, shapes emerged from the mirage. Not dust, not wind, bodies, elephants, first 2, then 5, then more. They came in silence, their pace unhurried, their oars resting at their sides. A wide formation, loose and watchful, as if drawn not by alarm but by presence. They made no sound, no trumpet, no cry, but their approach felt heavier than noise. The herd was returning. The men froze where they stood. The calf did not lift his head, but his ear twitched at the tremor of movement. His trunk shifted an inch closer to the ground, dragging against dried mud. They counted 9 adults and 2 juveniles. One matriarch in front, wide-backed and steady, walking a slow arc toward the scene. She did not look at the rangers. She looked at the mother, still waiting at the edge of the trees. For a few seconds they stood as mirror images, one emerging from the open, the other rooted in shadow. Then the matriarch stopped. The others followed one by one until the entire group formed a wide crescent along the far side of the pit. Not close enough to threaten, not far enough to ignore. They stood like that, watching. No one moved. The weight of their silence wrapped around the rescue site like a second sky. It was not fear. It was not permission. It was a kind of holding, as if the herd knew the moment was fragile, that any decision from either side might tip the scale. Elias lowered his hands. The ropes stayed loose. The calf remained still. What hung between them all, man, mother, calf, and herd, was a question none of them could answer yet. Would the baby rise? And if he did, would his legs carry him? The stakes did not need repeating now. Every ranger knew what could happen if they rushed. Every ranger knew what failure looked like. The calf was free from the ground but still locked in his body. If they helped him now and he fell wrong, he would not get another chance. So they waited. The herd did not step forward. They did not call. Their presence was the only sound that mattered now. One of the younger elephants shifted her weight and leaned slightly into the curve of the formation. She didn't move closer, but she was watching the baby. Her ears fluttered once, a breath, a pause, then stillness again. Elias pressed a palm lightly to the calf's side. "Not yet," he said. Dust lifted in small whirls across the open plain. The heat was still climbing, but no one wiped their brow. The work had paused, but the rescue had not ended, and across from them, the herd waited too, their trunks low, their ears quiet. They did not leave, they did not come closer, they just stayed. The wind dropped. Even the dust seemed to hold still. The calf lay across the softened trench, his limbs now freed from the hardened grip of mud, but his body unmoving. One leg twitched, then settled again. His eyes, rimmed with dirt and exhaustion, blinked once, then closed. Elias moved closer, knees grinding quietly into the earth. He crouched beside the calf's head and studied the slow rise and fall of the chest. Breathing was shallow but steady. They had done what they could. The ropes were still nearby. The boards pressed into the ground like the ribs of some old forgotten boat, but no one reached for them. Not now. The herd remained behind them, silent in their watch. The mother still stood between two acacias. Her tail flicked once. Her foot shifted, but she did not move forward. Elias pressed a hand gently to the calf's side. The skin was warm beneath his palm but trembled faintly with effort. The baby was still too weak to rise. He had been buried too long, drained too deeply. Standing might not come today, and if he couldn't stand, the mother wouldn't approach. That's how it worked. The choice had to be his. The others watched but stayed back. Nothing else could be done by force. If they tried to lift him now, even gently, the strain could break what little strength remained in his joints. If he were to make it had to begin from inside. A small sound followed. Not a cry, not a trumpet, just the scrape of dry trunk against dust. Elias didn't move. The calf shifted slightly, neck rolling just enough for the trunk to lift from the earth. It rose unsteadily, curling once, then swaying like a broken branch in the wind. It touched nothing at first. Then, with a slow, searching motion, it came to rest lightly against Elias's shoulder. Not for support, not for strength, just rest. Elias didn't speak, didn't flinch. The calf held it there, breathing hard, trunk trembling under its own weight. For a moment, nothing moved. Not the herd, not the team, not even the mother. Then, quietly, one of the rangers whispered, "He knows him." But no one answered, because this wasn't a moment of recognition. It was a moment of surrender, of quiet, exhausted trust. The trunk fell again, slowly, brushing past Elias's elbow before curling once more toward the ground. The calf exhaled, the breath raspy and long. His eyes opened briefly, then closed again. Elias lowered his hand to the earth, fingers grazing the cracked basin where the calf had lain all night. Around them, the heat had softened. A breeze moved the tips of the grass beyond the trench. Still the calf did not rise. Still the mother did not come. The risk hadn't passed. If he tried to stand now, he could fall hard. If his legs gave out, the herd might panic. If they lost this silence, they might lose him entirely. So they waited. Minutes passed. The calf's chest continued its slow rhythm. His trunk lay curled in the dust, its tip twitching softly in sleep or pain. No one moved, and in that stillness, the man and the calf remained, shoulder to shoulder, breath for breath, two bodies worn thin by time and heat and waiting. Above them, clouds began to gather in the west, not heavy, not storm-bound, just enough to cool the day. The breeze shifted again. It moved through the grass low to the earth, brushing over sun-baked roots and carrying the scent of water long evaporated. The calf had not risen. He lay breathing, weak but alive, his trunk curled into the mud where it had dropped. Elias remained beside him, crouched still, not speaking, not moving. The rest of the team stood just beyond the boards, watching the line of elephants hold their quiet vigil. Then something changed. A footstep, soft, deliberate, not out of sync but separate, the kind of motion that felt like silence bending. She stepped forward. The mother, who had kept her distance since the first hour, moved out from between the trees. One leg, then another. She passed the edge of shade. Her skin caught the light. The herd didn't follow. They didn't shift or stir, only watched. Her ears lay flat against her shoulders, relaxed. Her trunk hung low, brushing the ground as she walked. Her body didn't lurch or hesitate, but every step felt weighted, cautious and slow. She passed the halfway point between the tree line and the pit without pause. The dry earth crackled beneath her weight, but no dust rose. The rangers held still. None reached for ropes or planks now. Mumo tightened his grip on the handle of the empty bucket he still held, then set it down without sound. Elias stayed crouched. The calf's breath came in short bursts now, not panicked, but fading. He did not turn his head. He couldn't, but he twitched again as the vibrations of her approach settled into the ground around them. Another step, and then she stopped. 3 feet away, just outside the shallow trench, close enough that Elias could see the cracks in the edges of her tusks, the dried soil crusted along the underside of her jaw. She didn't lift her head. She didn't reach for the calf. She stood, perfectly still, the breath in her chest rising once, then holding. Elias dropped his gaze and slowly stepped back. He didn't speak. The others followed without needing a signal. They retreated in careful steps, creating a wide berth around the trench. The air shifted with them. But the mother didn't follow. She lowered her head just slightly. Her trunk moved with a slow arc, stopping above the calf's ear. Not touching, just close. The tip trembled in the open air before dipping toward his neck, brushing it gently. The calf flinched, a small, startled jolt. Then he was still again. Another breath passed. She touched his side once, then pulled away. Stepped back, not far, just enough to see him fully. Her trunk curled loosely, almost listless now. Her body swayed in place. Then she shifted her stance and waited. The calf stirred. One foreleg pressed into the dirt. It slid forward an inch. His head lifted slightly, then dropped again. Another pause. Then both front legs moved. Together this time. His rear limbs remained weak, uncertain, but the shift was visible. He was trying. The mother didn't move. She made no sound, only stood. The herd in the distance remained still, a curved wall of silence at the edge of the plain. The calf struggled again. His front lifted higher. The trench groaned beneath him as his hooves scraped for grip. The boards flexed, then held. For a second, his entire body shook under its own weight. Then he rose, shaky, angled, but upright. His legs trembled with each breath, too thin to carry him far. His head sagged low, ears limp against his neck. But he stood. The mother didn't approach. Instead, she turned slowly and stepped away from the trench. Not quickly, just enough to clear a path. She was ready. Elias stood a few feet behind, his breath caught in his throat, mud streaked across his shirt. He didn't smile, didn't speak, only watched. The calf stumbled once, then took a step. Another, then paused. The rangers didn't cheer, didn't move. He followed her. At first only one step at a time, back legs dragging through the soft earth, but his path held. His body swayed, then straightened. He walked, and behind him the herd began to shift. One turned, then another, and slowly the half-circle broke, letting the mother pass through. Grass bent in the wind. Dust curled along the footprints. No one looked back. The calf stood on unsteady legs, the dust of the trench still clinging to the folds behind his knees. His ears drooped, and his breath came in short, uneven bursts, but he did not fall. Behind him the trench lay flattened, soft boards pressed into the soil, the shape of his body still faintly visible in the collapsed earth. The mother had not looked back. She walked with quiet certainty, her tail swaying gently, her footsteps leaving deliberate imprints in the soil. She moved slowly, allowing space. The path between them widened, not from distance, but from choice. She was letting him try. The calf wavered. His front legs were steady enough, but the rear threatened to buckle with each forward shift. Still, he moved, not with strength, but with memory. His steps left faint, broken tracks in the dust. They would be gone by windfall, but for now, they held. The herd waited, a loose crescent of bodies along the rim of the plain. None advanced, none called out. They stood as they had all morning, silent, still, and watching. Their stillness was not indifference. It was understanding. Elias kept to the edge of the clearing, his boots sunk half an inch into the wet soil left from poured water. His hands hung loosely at his sides, streaked with dried mud. He didn't speak. His breath caught once, then slowed. The calf took another step, then another. He stumbled, his rear legs caught beneath him. Knees folding into each other. His body sagged and he dropped low, too tired to rise all the way. Dust puffed around his legs, but he didn't cry out, and he didn't stay down. After a moment's pause, he pushed again. Slower this time. A breath moved through him, not strong, but steady. With one slow push, he rose again. And that was enough. The mother stopped walking, just for a moment. She turned her head, not fully, just enough to see him. She didn't move toward him. She waited. The calf took 3 more steps, his trunk swaying close to the ground, trailing through dry grass. His legs carried him forward, not confidently, but forward still. The distance between them shortened. Not quickly, but clearly. When he reached her, she stepped aside, not to pull him in, but to make room. He stopped beside her, and they stood together. Then, almost without signal, the herd moved. The half-circle bent wider, shifting into a wide path, then narrowing again once the calf and mother passed through. There was no sound but the rhythm of footfalls. No trumpet, no thud, only movement, soft and complete. They closed around him, not in celebration, but in return. The rangers did not follow. They remained still, the rescue gear spread out behind them, water jugs tipped and emptied, and boards stained dark with soil. Nothing more was needed now. Elias stepped back once, then again. His shoulders dropped. The calf walked beneath the safety of the herd, his pace slow but holding. The dust around his legs lifted in soft spirals, catching the light as the sun dipped behind a veil of passing clouds. Far across the plain, the grasses swayed in a slow ripple, and in that light, the dust carried him home.